내가 먼저 질문하겠습니다. As you know, we've got extreme climate in Korea.
Yes.
So when we plant clematism garden, so which point do we need to care about?
Okay, so that is a very good question, and I think a very important question wherever you're growing clematis.
Yeah.
Firstly, it's very important that you buy a good plant that has been grown well in the nursery. Sometimes there are very tiny, small, cheap plants that are sold, and that's not a good idea. You're wanting to plant a good quality clematis. So firstly, these are just young clematis, but you need a clematis that is in a 2 or a 3 liter pot to plant in the garden. And so with your very cold winters in South Korea, it's very important that the plant is prepared. So let me talk about the planting site. So dig a hole that is 45 centimeters deep, 45 centimeters in diameter, and then to take out the soil, and then you can put back in that hole that you've dug some good well-rotted garden compost in the bottom, and then you can fill back with the potting compost that you can buy in a garden centre. But while you're doing the preparation of that, so you've got your clematis in this pot, so then I suggest you have a bucket quite deep and fill it with water. Put the clematis plant in its pot in the bucket of water for 20 minutes. That will mean that the root system of the plant will take up the moisture that it needs, because if that pot is a little bit dry when you plant it, then it's impossible to water it properly. So you collect a good quality plant, and then you dig the hole deep, and then you put the clematis in a bucket of water so that it has plenty of moisture. So then you leave that for 20 minutes. You take the plant out of its pot, and when you plant it in the garden situation, plant it at extra 5 or 6 centimeters deeper. So if that is the level of the compost in the pot, then just plant it that little bit deeper, because that will allow the plant to develop, I say, like a climbing perennial plant. It'll develop more roots and more shoots from the base, and that plant will be much stronger. And then to remember that the clematis love a shady root system, so you can grow some really shallow rooted perennial plants and grow them over the top around the root system of the clematis, because clematis love a shady root system. Sometimes people put slate or stone over them. That's not such a good idea, because the slate and the stones will heat up with your hot summer temperature. So natural plant material is best. So always remember that clematis love to grow in a microclimate with other plant material.
Beginner gardener has a face on difficult to the pruning clematis, actually. And could you give them tip of the pruning clematis, the way and time for the beginner gardener?
So for the beginner gardener or for the experienced gardening, the pruning of clematis is really quite very much the same. So the first spring after you planted your clematis, it's really important that you chop all its top growth down to about 15 centimeters. It doesn't matter which type of clematis it is, but if you chop it down to 15 centimeters, so what you have in the springtime, you have the new growth coming up like this, and you can cut it just like that, just above the node, so it's about 15 centimeters, and you see I've cut it here just above those buds, and they will start to grow from there. There are two ways to plant the clematis. With the old varieties, there are 3 types of pruning that you do with the older varieties. So firstly, there are the clematis that flower on the old wood in the spring, and perhaps not so much for Korean gardens, because the montanas or the evergreen ones like Armandi and some of the Alpina and Macropetala types. The Alpina and Macropetala types will be winter hardy in Korea, but not probably the Montana types, and certainly not the Montana. So with those early large flowering clematis that flower in late winter or early spring, you don't do any pruning until they finish flowering. And so by the time you get to midsummer, they're starting to put on luscious new growth, and you just trim the new growth back a little bit, shorten it, and I say you keep the plant growing within its allotted space. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's group one.
Yeah.
Group two are the old-fashioned large-flowered varieties like the very famous Nelly Moser or the very famous The President and some of those lovely old varieties. They all start over winter. The top growth in Korea may be killed down to ground level, but if you're fortunate enough, they will have some old wood, and so you really reduce the top growth by about 1/3. You do that at the end of winter, early spring. But if it's been a very severe winter, then they will be killed to ground level, and then they will just naturally grow again. And then the third group of clematis are the summer flowering ones, the Viticella ones, the Jackmanite types. All of those, the top growth is killed to the ground level during the winter, or it dies back to ground level, and so you chop those off at about maybe 30 centimeters, 15 to 30 centimeters above ground level. And even if the top growth has not been killed, then cut it back low, because you want that plant to be strong and bushy from the space. So those are the three of the old-fashioned ones. But with the Raymond Everson clematis, we bred them to be different and to be much easier for gardeners. So what it is with those ones, that is an ideal plant. So the plant is in the ground, and what you do very simply with the Everson clematis, you use a ponytail cut, and you grab it like that, and you cut it like that, just like a ponytail.
Okay. It's easy.
And then so that's easy pruning. And it's about easy gardening.
Yes.
And then with the doubles and the semi-double ones, if they've retained their old wood in the winter, then you take away 1/3 of their top growth. Otherwise, with the doubles and that, you have to prune them down quite low like these, and they will start to grow. But the great thing about the Everson Poulsen double varieties, even if they are killed to ground level, they will grow and they'll still produce those double or semi-double flowers in that current season. But with the old varieties like Duchess of Edinburgh, Vivian Pennell, if they're killed to the ground in the winter, then they will not produce double flowers the next year.
To contrast to British, Korean almost all living in their apartment. For breeding Leimund collection is suitable from balcony, and if it's possible, which variety and feature are strong for breeding on balcony?
Yes, that is a very important question, and because of the breeding and development work that we've done in recent years, then we do have the clematis that flower very, very low. So we have varieties like Bijou, which grows and flowers at no more than 30 centimeters, and Filigree, which is a nice, it's a mauvey color, and then we have another one called Elodie. So there are some of those ones that flower only quite low, and so those ones for growing on a balcony, it would be important that you overwinter them. So during the winter, if you're growing them in pots, and I assume you will grow them in pots, so take the pot into a frost-free position over winter, not too warm, so that it won't get frozen. And then when you have the springtime, you can take the pot from where it was with the plant and put it on your balcony, and then it will grow and it will flower, and you can enjoy it through the early summer. And with Bijou and Filigree, then they grow a little bit taller for the autumn and have taller flowers. So with those ones again, you prune them back in the very early spring. So there are those, and we want to develop more of those short, compact, free-flowering ones. And so look out for some really super new colors coming through.
레이먼드씨께서 원하는 방향이 있으시더라고요. 저희 한국에 딱 적합한 품종들 어제 몇 가지 보여주셨는데 저는 어제 솔직히 감탄했습니다.
네, 그건 아직 비밀입니다.
아직 비밀이긴 한데 살짝 말씀드리자면은 사실 클레마티스 재배자 입장으로 봤을 때도 사실 쉬운 식물은 아니에요. 왜냐면 기본적으로 덩굴 식물이기 때문에 관리하시기가 쉽지는 않으신데 레이먼드 에비슨 품종 같은 경우에는 굉장히 컴팩트하게 나온 품종들이 많아요. 그리고 그 방향도 말씀드려도 되나요?
네.
네, 그 방향으로 가고 있고 계시기 때문에 나중에 가드너 분들께서 직접 베란다나 아니면 정원에서 키우실 때 굉장히 쉬운 방법으로 예쁜 클레마티스를 즐길 수 있는 그런 품종들이 많이 나올 것 같아서 굉장히 재배자 입장으로서도 굉장히 기대가 됩니다.
자, 지금까지 레이먼드 이비션 씨와 얘기를 나눠봤는데 무려 첼시스에서만 34개의 금메달을 받은 진짜 클레마티스의 거장분과 얘기를 하게 돼서 정말 뜻깊은 시간이었어요.
네.
네, 기회가 된다면 레이먼드 씨가 한국에 오셔서 한번 이렇게 가드너 분들과 소통할 수 있는 시간을 가졌으면 좋겠습니다.
I want to hope you visit Korea someday again.
Yeah.
Talk about the clematis with Korean gardener. We make a place.
It would be my pleasure.
Can be very nice.
그럼 저희 다음 시간에 또 만나요.
안녕.
Happy gardening!
후.